The 18th of July 1942, 4:38 hours. Augsburg, Germany. The runway is barely visible in the half-light before dawn. Thin mist hugs the concrete, clinging to boots, to steel, to the breath of the men standing silently along the edge. Somewhere in the distance, a bird startles. No one speaks. A single aircraft waits at the far end of the strip. Its shape is wrong. Too sleek. Too clean. Its wings are straight, almost defiant, and beneath them hang two unfamiliar nacelles, smooth, swollen, breathing quietly like restrained animals. There is no propeller, no blur of spinning blades, just stillness. Then a sound begins. Not the familiar cough of a piston engine, not the rhythmic thunder of a Daimler-Benz warming up. This is something else. A rising whine. Metallic. Alien. It cuts through the morning air like a blade drawn slowly from its sheath. Engineers exchange glances. One man unconsciously steps back. Inside the cockpit, Flag Captain Fritz Wendell tightens his gloves. His hands are steady, but his pulse is not. Years of test flying have taught him when something is different, when the margin between history and disaster narrows to a few meters of concrete. He pushes the throttles forward. The response is not immediate. For a terrifying second, nothing happens. Then the engines answer, not with violence, but with inevitability. The aircraft begins to move. Slowly at first. Too slowly. Wendell's eyes flick to the end of the runway. Distance collapses. Faster. The whine becomes a scream. Acceleration presses him into the seat in a way no piston aircraft ever has. The end of the runway rushes toward him, concrete markers flashing past. For an instant, it feels like a mistake, like hubris. Then the aircraft lifts. Not a leap, a glide, effortless. The wheels leave the ground, and the world drops away. On the ground, engineers stare upward, mouths slightly open, as the aircraft climbs, not clawing for altitude, but sliding into it, smooth and confident, as if gravity itself has been negotiated with. This is a Messerschmitt Me-262, and in this moment, Germany has just flown into the future. The aircraft banks left, engine singing, and Wendell feels it immediately, the speed. At low altitude, without strain, the airspeed needle surges past anything he has ever seen. The controls are light, responsive, alive. There is no vibration, no protest. You can almost imagine what it would feel like to be hunted by this machine. Above Augsburg, the jet climbs higher, faster. It does not roar like a predator. It hums, purpose-built, unconcerned. Back on the ground, Willie Messerschmitt watches through binoculars, jaw clenched. He has waited years for this. Years of arguments, compromises, engine failures, shortages. Years of pushing an idea no one fully trusted. Jet propulsion, a concept whispered about in laboratories, dismissed in meetings, starved of resources while war demanded immediate results. Yet here it is, carving a clean arc through the sky. For a brief, dangerous moment, the implications are overwhelming. This aircraft is untouchable. No Allied fighter can catch it. No bomber can outrun it. With cannons mounted in its nose, it could tear through formations in seconds, strike, vanish. A new kind of air war, one-sided, merciless. The engineers know it. Messerschmitt knows it. Somewhere deep down, the WWII knows it too. But knowledge does not equal power. As the Me-262 levels off and pushes even faster, unseen forces are already closing in. Not from the sky, but from Berlin. From conference rooms thick with smoke and certainty. From a man who sees war not as physics or production, but as vision and will. The aircraft returns to base less than an hour later. Touchdown is smooth. Applause breaks out, restrained, cautious, but real. Wendell climbs from the cockpit, face flushed, eyes bright. It flies, he says simply. That should have been enough. But in the Third Reich, nothing exists in isolation, not even the future. Within days, reports move up the chain. Performance figures, speed estimates, armament potential. Somewhere along the way, the aircraft stops being a fighter and becomes an idea, one that can be reshaped, reproposed, bent to fit a single man's imagination. In Berlin, Adolf Hitler studies photographs of the jet. He does not ask how many enemy fighters it can destroy. He asks a different question. Can it carry bombs? The room goes quiet. Generals exchange looks. Engineers hesitate. This is not what the aircraft was designed for. Its speed, its fragile engines, its limited fuel, all optimized for interception, not payload. To burden it with bombs would change everything. But the decision is already forming. Hitler does not want a defender. He wants a symbol, a weapon of retaliation, a miracle that can strike cities, turn the tide, shock the enemy into submission, a blitz bomber. From that moment on, the Me-262 is no longer just an aircraft. It is a battleground, between engineers and ideologues, between physics and fantasy, between what is and what one man wants it to be. And as a jet sits on the tarmac at Augsburg, cooling metal ticking softly in the morning air, the future waits, engine silent, fate undecided, not knowing that it is about to be delayed, twisted, and slowly destroyed. The 26th of May 1943, 11:17 hours, Berghof, Obersalzberg. The mountain air is clear, deceptively calm. Pine trees sway gently below the terrace as sunlight spills across polished stone. From here, the world looks orderly, controllable. Inside, maps cover walls. Red pins press deep into felt. Stalingrad, Kursk, Hamburg. Losses disguise the positions. Reality softened by distance. Adolf Hitler stands at the head of the room. In his hands, photographs of an aircraft that should not exist. The Me-262 looks unreal even on paper. Sleek, modern, like something torn from another decade and dropped into a war already drowning in steel and blood. Hitler studies it silently, eyes tracing the engines, the wings, the nose. He does not ask about climb rate. He does not ask about interception speed. He does not ask how many bombers it can destroy. He looks up. Where are the bombs? The question lands heavily. Around the table sit men who understand exactly what this aircraft represents. Field Marshal Erhard Milch, engineers from Messerschmitt, Luftwaffe officers who have watched Allied bomber streams grow thicker by the month, who have buried pilots faster than they can train replacements. This jet is salvation. But salvation must first survive politics. One engineer clears his throat. Carefully, respectfully, he explains that the Me-262 was designed as a Jagdflugzeug, a fighter, that its engines are sensitive, that its structure is optimized for speed and climb, not payload, that adding bombs would reduce performance, increase takeoff distance, strain engines already pushed to their limits. Hitler listens, then dismisses it. The enemy is bombing our cities, he says flatly. They must feel fear, shock, retaliation. He taps the photograph. This aircraft will do that. Someone tries again. A Luftwaffe general points out that Germany is losing the air war, that bombers roam almost unchallenged, that what they need, desperately, is an interceptor that can shred formations before they reach German airspace. Hitler's expression hardens. No, he says. Fighters defend. Bombers decide. It is not a discussion. It is a decree. The Me-262 will be modified to carry bombs. It will strike London. It will strike Allied ports. It will be the weapon that proves Germany still commands a future. In that moment, time slows. Because what Hitler does not understand, or refuses to, is that jet propulsion is unforgiving. Every kilogram matters. Every structural change ripples through the entire design. To turn a predator into a mule is to break its spine. But no one challenges him further. They have learned. Orders follow swiftly. Production priorities shift. Design teams are forced to rework airframes. Hard points are added beneath the nose. Weight increases. Balance changes. Testing schedules are rewritten. Months pass. Then more months. Engines fail. Nose wheels collapse on takeoff due to increased load. Accidents multiply. Pilots die, not in combat, but in testing. Meanwhile, the sky over Germany darkens. B-17 flying fortresses arrive in formations that stretch to the horizon. B-24 Liberators follow. Escort fighters, P-47s, then P-51 Mustangs, range deeper, staying longer, hunting freely. Airfields burn. Factories vanish overnight. And somewhere in hangars across Bavaria, the Me-262 sits, unfinished, unfielded, waiting for a role it was never meant to play. Inside Messerschmitt's offices, the mood turns poisonous. Engineers argue. Designers plead. Test pilots complain openly. They know the truth. Every week loss is a crime. Every delay hands the Allies another advantage. Willy Messerschmitt himself grows increasingly desperate. He writes memoranda, requests meetings, tries to explain that the jet's true power lies in interception, that it could slaughter bombers it will have allowed to fly as designed. Some messages reach Berlin. Most are ignored. Hitler remains obsessed with the idea of the Schnell bomber, the fast bomber. He imagines jets streaking low over enemy cities, striking before defenses can react. Speed as spectacle. Technology as theater. But war is not theater. By early 1944, the Me-262 finally enters limited service, not as a fighter it should have been, but as a compromised hybrid. Pilots train on a machine that demands perfection while offering none in return. The engines flame out if mishandled. Takeoffs are treacherous. Landings worse. And yet, when flown clean, without bombs, something extraordinary happens. On isolated sorties, Me-262 pilots encounter Allied aircraft. The results are terrifying. The jet slices through bomber formations like a scythe. Cannon fire tears aluminum apart. Pilots report closing speed so high that enemy gunners barely react. Escorts cannot catch it, cannot turn with it, cannot touch it. For brief moments, the future flashes alive, and then disappears, because there are too few jets, too little fuel, too many restrictions. Orders still insist on bombing missions. Interception remains secondary. Permission is required. Time is wasted. The Allies notice. Intelligence reports mention jet-propelled fighters. Pilots return shaken, describing aircraft that simply vanish. At first, commanders doubt them. Then wreckage appears. Then photographs. The race accelerates. Allied planners adapt quickly. They identify Me-262 airfields. They learn its weaknesses, not in the air, but on the ground. Jets are fastest at altitude, slowest during takeoff and landing. And that is where they strike. As the Me-262 struggles to become what it was never meant to be, the enemy adjusts to what it already is. The irony is brutal. Germany has the most advanced fighter aircraft in the world, and it is being strangled before it can breathe. By the summer of 1944, the war has shifted irreversibly. Normandy burns. The Eastern Front collapses. Fuel shortages cripple training. Factories are dispersed, bombed, rebuilt, bombed again. And the Me-262, this miracle of engineering, remains a promise largely unfulfilled. Not because it failed, but because it was never allowed to succeed. The jet that could have changed the air war now fights for scraps of opportunity, constrained by decisions made far from the runway, by men who never heard its engine scream. And as Allied fighters circle German airfields, waiting patiently for jets to land, the future becomes a target. The 18th of August 1944, 14:02 hours, near Leipzig, Germany. The sky is crowded. At 25,000 feet, a box formation of B-17 flying fortresses drones forward, engines droning in a steady, industrial rhythm. Silver wings glint in the sun. Vapor trails carve pale scars across the blue. Inside one bomber, a waist gunner wipes sweat from his eyes and scans the empty air, bored by the sameness of it all. They have done this before, dozens of times. Flak will come. Fighters will come. They always do. And they will die, or limp home, or watch someone else fall out of the sky trailing smoke. Routine has dulled the edge of fay. Then the radio crackles. Unidentified contacts. Fast, too fast. Before anyone can respond, something slices through the formation. Not dives, not turns. Slices. A gray-shaped flashes past the lead bomber so quickly the eye barely registers it. No propeller blare. No warning. Just a violent impact as cannon shells rip through aluminum and flesh alike. The fortress shudders. A wing peels away. The aircraft drops, silently at first, then screaming. The gunner never fires. Another flash. Another bomber erupts. Inside the formations, panic spreads. Gunners swing turrets wildly, firing at ghosts. The closing speed is impossible. By the time a target is sighted, it is already gone, climbing away, unscathed, contemptuous. This is not a fighter. This is an execution. Above them, Lieutenant Walter Nautney pulls his Me-262 into a climb, throttles back to protect the engines. His hands move delicately. This machine does not forgive roughness, but when treated right, it is untouchable. He glances behind him. Nothing follows. The escorts, Mustangs, Thunderbolts, are still turning, still accelerating, still trying to understand what just happened. They are fast aircraft by piston standards. Against this, they are statues. For the first time, Allied aircrew face an enemy they cannot fight on equal terms. When the bombers land hours later, those that survive, the debriefing rooms buzz with disbelief. Reports are confused. Speeds estimated wildly. Some claim the attackers were rockets. Others swear they were experimental aircraft. Intelligence officers take notes, frown, exchange looks. Then the film is developed. Blurry images show twin engines under straight wings. No propellers. Jets. The Allies believe. Within days, priorities shift. New directives circulate. Jet airfields become high-value targets. Patrols are reassigned. Pilots are instructed to loiter near German bases, waiting, not for combat in the sky, but for opportunity on the ground. Because that is the Me-262's paradox. Invincible at speed, vulnerable at birth. The jet engines, Jumo 004S, are fragile miracles. Built with inferior alloys due to shortages, they last mere hours. They respond slowly to throttle changes. Flameouts are common. On final approach, the Me-262 is fast but helpless, unable to accelerate quickly, engines lagging behind the pilot's intentions. And the Allies learned this quickly. At airfields like Lechfeld, Schwabisthal, and Aachen, Mustangs begin to circle. Patient, methodical. They wait for the jets to return low on fuel, engines hot, pilots focus on landing. Then they strike. Me-262s are destroyed meters above the runway. Some explode on the ground. Others crash in flames as pilots desperately try to coax power from engines that refuse to answer. For every victory in the air, the Germans lose jets on the ground. Still, when the Me-262 gets through, when it intercepts bomber streams cleanly, the results are devastating. Entire formations scatter. Morale cracks. Bomber losses spike in isolated engagements. The aircraft works, but there are never enough of them. Production is a nightmare. Factories are bombed, dispersed into forests, tunnels, barns. Parts arrive late or not at all. Fuel shortages ground squadrons. Training is rushed. Pilots transition from Bf-109s to jets in weeks, sometimes days. And above all, doctrine is chaos. Some units are ordered to bomb, others to intercept. Some pilots ignore orders entirely, hunting bombers whenever they can, knowing it is what the aircraft was born to do. The war, meanwhile, does not wait. By autumn 1944, Germany is bleeding on every front. The Western Allies push east. The Red Army surges from the east. Cities burn nightly. Oil refineries are shattered. Synthetic fuel plants are reduced to smoking craters. Jet fuel becomes precious. Engines are rationed. Flights cancelled. Jets sit idle, lined up like ghosts of a future that arrived too late. And yet, even now, the Me-262 terrifies its enemies. Allied commanders know the truth. If this aircraft had appeared in numbers a year earlier, the air war would have been unrecognizable. Losses would have been catastrophic. Timelines rewritten. Decisions delayed. But history does not reward potential. It rewards timing. In November 1944, Nautney himself is killed, shot down during a chaotic engagement, circumstances still debated. His death becomes symbolic. Germany's greatest jet ace, lost not to technological inferiority, but to the grinding weight of a war already decided. As winter closes in, snow blankets the airfields. Jets struggle to take off on icy runways. Mechanics work with numb fingers, coaxing life from engines never meant to endure this. And still, the orders from above remain confused. Bomb when possible. Intercept when allowed. Save fuel. Take risks. Don't take risks. Contradictions stack upon contradictions. The Me-262 continues to prove, again and again, what it could do. But the world around it is collapsing too fast to care. The Allies no longer fear the jet. They plan around it. And that is the difference between a weapon that changes history and one that merely haunts it. As 1944 ends, Germany still holds the future in its hands. But its grip is slipping. And soon, even the sky will no longer belong to it. The 1st of January 1945, 9:12 hours, Western Germany, Operation Bodenplatte. The sky is low and gray, pressed down by winter. Snow clings to the edges of runways, hardened into jagged ice by boots and tires. Engines cough in the cold. Men stamp their feet, breath fogging the air. Across multiple airfields, aircraft begin to roll. This is Germany's last gamble in the air. A coordinated strike. Fighters sweeping low across Allied bases, aiming to destroy aircraft on the ground, to claw back air superiority in a single, violent morning. For pilots, it is framed as a turning point. For commanders, a necessity. For history, a final convulsion. Among the attackers are Me-262s, jets among propellers, the future flying beside the past. But the execution is chaos. Navigation errors scatter formations. Friendly flak opens fire on its own aircraft. Some pilots attack the wrong airfields. Others never find their targets at all. Radio discipline collapses under stress and snow static. When the attacks end, Allied losses are heavy, but replaceable. German losses are catastrophic. Experienced pilots are gone. Aircraft are destroyed faster than factories can replace them. The Luftwaffe bleeds out in a single morning. And the Me-262, once again, is misused. Instead of intercepting bombers, its true calling, it is dragged into a desperate ground attack role, skimming runways, strafing parked aircraft, exposed and vulnerable. Jets that should never have been slowed are forced to fly low and predictable, all because the war has reached a stage where desperation dictates doctrine. Back in Berlin, the fantasy persists. Hitler still believes in miracle weapons. He speaks of jets, rockets, revenge. He imagines sudden reversals, enemy morale collapsing under technological shock. But the map does not change. Fuel shortages become absolute. By early 1945, many Me-262 units receive barely enough fuel for a handful of sorties per week. Pilots sit idle, listening to bombers overhead, unable to take off. Engines, already fragile, are pushed past their limits to conserve time and resources. Flameouts kill more pilots than combat. Landings are rushed. Maintenance is improvised. And yet, even now, the jet refuses to be irrelevant. In February 1945, a handful of Me-262s intercept a bomber stream over southern Germany. The results are as brutal as ever. Bombers fall. Escorts are left behind. Survivors report the same thing again. We couldn't touch them. But it no longer matters. The Allies have solved the problem not by matching the jet, but by overwhelming it. Hundreds of aircraft for every interception. Endless fuel. Endless pilots. Endless replacements. Technology meets logistics. Logistics wins. The Me-262 was never meant to fight alone. It was meant to be the spearhead of a reimagined air force. Integrated radar control. Mass squadrons. Coordinated strikes. Instead, it flies in fragments. The irony deepens. Germany's most advanced aircraft is forced to operate in the most primitive conditions. Dispersed airstrips carved into forests. Date runways. Hidden hangars vulnerable to discovery. Crews work under constant threat of strafing. Jets are camouflaged under trees, engines covered with tops, like priceless instrument hidden in a collapsing house. Pilots grow fatalistic. They know what the aircraft can do. They have felt it. They have seen Allied formations break apart. But they also know the truth. They are fighting time, and time is not on their side. In March 1945, Allied forces cross the Rhine. The front lines move faster than German command can react. Airfields are overrun. Jets are destroyed on the ground to prevent capture. Some are burned by their own crews, engines still warm. The future goes up in smoke. Engineers flee or surrender. Pilots abandon aircraft for bicycles, for boots, for anything that can move them west or south. The Luftwaffe, once the terror of Europe, dissolves into isolated pockets of resistance. When American troops reach Lechfeld Airfield, they find Me-262s abandoned in hangars, some intact, some half disassembled, some still bearing bomb racks, symbols of a decision that cost a year Germany never had. Allied engineers walk around them in disbelief. They study the engines, the airframe, the aerodynamics, and they understand immediately this aircraft changes everything. Not for Germany, for whoever controls peace. The war ends weeks later. Germany lies in ruins. Cities flattened. Industry shattered. Millions dead. The ride that promised 1,000 years lasts 12. And the Me-262, this jet that arrived from the future, never gets a chance to fight a war it was designed for. Instead, it becomes a lesson. A warning etched in aluminum and scorched steel. Because innovation does not win wars alone. Timing matters. Doctrine matters. Leadership matters. And ego, unchecked, unchallenged, can suffocate even the most brilliant idea. As Allied scientists ship captured jets back for study, as test pilots prepare to fly them under new flags, one truth becomes unavoidable. Germany did not lose the jet age because it lacked genius. It lost it because it could not let go of control. The future arrived, and politics strangled it. But the story is not finished yet, because what Germany lost, the world was about to inherit. The 3rd of May 1945, 1641 hours. Lechfeld Air Base, Bavaria. The shooting has stopped. Not everywhere, but here, at least, the air is quiet. Smoke drifts lazily from distant towns. The thunder of artillery has faded into something abstract, almost imagined. American soldiers move carefully across the airfield, rifles low but ready, boots crunching over gravel and broken glass. Then they see them. Rows of aircraft unlike anything they've encountered before. No propellers. No radial engines. Clean lines. Twin nacelles. Jets. Some sit intact beneath makeshift camouflage. Others are scorched, sabotaged by their own crews. A few are half-assembled, frozen mid-berth, tools still scattered around them as if mechanics simply vanished. One American officer stops dead. He has flown fighters. He has seen Mustangs, Thunderbolts, Lightnings. This is different. This feels like trespassing into a future he wasn't meant to see yet. Within hours, the airfield becomes a hive of activity. Engineers arrive. Intelligence officers. Photographers. Everything is catalogued. Serial numbers recorded. Engines inspected. Airframes measured. Word spreads fast. The Germans didn't just build a jet. They built the jet. Orders come down from the highest levels. These aircraft are not trophies. They are assets. They are to be shipped, studied, understood. No detail is too small. No component too insignificant. Operation Lusty, LF-12 secret technology, is already underway. Across Germany, Allied teams race each other and the advancing front to seize anything of value. Aircraft, blueprints, wind tunnel data, test reports, engineers themselves. Men like Werner von Braun are already being extracted. Others, less famous but no less critical, follow. The Me-262 becomes a centerpiece. Captured jets are flown, carefully, to Allied airfields. Test pilots approach them with a mix of reverence and suspicion. These machines killed their comrades weeks earlier. Now they are expected to climb inside and trust them. They do, and the verdict is immediate. The Me-262 is flawed, but revolutionary. Its engines are temperamental. Yes, its metallurgy imperfect. Its reliability questionable. But the concept is sound. More than sound, it is inevitable. Jet propulsion is not a weapon. It is a transition. American and British engineers pore over the designs, cross-referencing them with their own experimental programs. The British already have jets, the Gloucester Meteor, but nothing as fast, nothing as mature. The Americans have concepts, prototypes, ideas still struggling to leave the ground. The Me-262 accelerates everything. Within months, lessons learned from German failures reshape Allied thinking. Engine materials improve. Throttle response is refined. A-frame stress is better understood. Doctrine evolves. And this time, there is no Führer demanding bombs. There is no ideology distorting purpose. Only performance. By the time the war officially ends, the jet age has already begun, just not under German flag. The irony is sharp. Germany paid the price of innovation. Others collect the dividends. In the United States, test flights lead to new aircraft. In Britain, engineers refine their designs. In the Soviet Union, captured technology feeds parallel programs. Each side walks away with pieces of the same puzzle. The Mi-262 does not win Germany the war. It wins the world the future. But even as the jet's legacy spreads, the question lingers, uncomfortable, unavoidable. What if? What if the Mi-262 had been allowed to fly as intended in 1943? What if hundreds, not dozens, had intercepted bomber streams? What if Germany had protected its pilots instead of sacrificing them to fantasy? Historians debate it endlessly. Some argue it wouldn't have mattered, that Allied production and manpower was simply too vast, that logistics would have crushed innovation regardless. Others are less certain, because air superiority is not abstract. It shapes decisions, delays offensives, protects industry, buys time, and time, more than anything, is what Germany never had enough of. The tragedy of the Mi-262 is not that it failed. It is that it proved it could succeed just too late. In the hangars of captured airfields, Allied officers take photographs beside German jets. Some smile. Some look thoughtful. A few look almost somber. They understand what they are seeing. Not a defeated weapon. A warning. That genius without discipline is fragile. That innovation without clarity can be wasted. That politics, when allowed to override reality, can strangle even the most powerful ideas. The jet age will belong to those who listen to engineers, not mythmakers. As the Mi-262 disappears into museums, test programs, and footnotes, its engines silent at last, its story becomes something larger than Germany's defeat. It becomes a lesson written in speed. Because the future does not care who invents it, only who uses it wisely. And in the final months of World War II, Germany held the future in its hands. Then watched it slip away. Autumn 1946. Wright Field, Dayton, Ohio. 10:23 hours. The hangar doors slide open slowly, metal scraping against metal. Inside, under bright American lights, a German aircraft waits. Painted now with U.S. markings, its shape is unchanged, sleek, defiant, unmistakable. The Mi-262 looks almost embarrassed to be standing still, as if motion is its natural state and rests in insult. American test pilots walk around it in silence. They are not awed easily. They have flown P-51 Mustangs at the edge of their limits. They have pushed experimental aircraft beyond safety margins. But this machine forces a different kind of respect. It does not feel like a captured enemy. It feels like a preview. One pilot climbs a ladder and settles into the cockpit. The instruments are German. The labels unfamiliar. The design philosophy different, more aggressive, more compact, less forgiving. The engines spool up. That same whine rises again. Not alien anymore, just inevitable. When the jet lifts off, observers watch it accelerate across the sky with a speed that still feels wrong for the era. They shake their heads. Some smile. Others frown, already calculating. Because now comes a question Germany never answered properly. How do you fight with this? Back in briefing rooms, analysts play out scenarios that will never happen. What if Mi-262 squadrons had appeared in force in early 1943? What if bomber losses had doubled? Tripled? What if daylight bombing had become unsustainable? They do not speculate out of sympathy. They speculate out of necessity, because the next war will not forgive ignorance. The consensus formed quietly, without drama. The Mi-262 would not have won Germany the war, but it could have changed how the war was fought. Bomber streams would have been forced higher, farther, escorted more heavily, raids delayed, targets reprioritized, the tempo slowed, decisions postponed, and in war, postponement can be everything. That is the uncomfortable truth. Germany did not fail because the Mi-262 was imperfect. Every first-generation weapon is. Germany failed because it treated innovation as propaganda instead of doctrine. Hitler wanted symbols. Engineers needed systems. The gap between those two things is where time was lost. Across the Atlantic, the lesson lands hard. The United States accelerates jet programs. Britain does the same. The Soviet Union, taking no chances, pushes relentlessly, folding German expertise into its own industrial machine. Jet fighters multiply. Within 5 years, piston engines are obsolete. The sky changes forever. And somewhere in all of this progress, the Me-262 becomes a ghost, referenced, studied, surpassed, but never forgotten. It is the aircraft that arrived too early for the people who built it, and just in time for everyone else. In Germany, ruins are cleared. Airfields become farmland. Hangars collapse or are repurposed. Few civilians ever see the jets that might have rewritten their fate. History moves on, but the shadow remains. Because every time a jet screams down a runway, every time speed outpaces instinct, the lineage traces back to a misty morning in Augsburg, when a future lifted off and the present did not know what to do with it. And that is the final cruelty. Germany's greatest technological leap did not fail in the sky. It failed in rooms without windows. Rooms filled with certainty, with ego, with decisions immune to consequence. The Me-262 did everything asked of it in the air. The men who controlled it did not. And that is why, when the world entered the jet age, Germany was no longer invited to lead it. The future had moved on, leaving behind a lesson written at 800 kilometers per hour. The 12th of April 1947. Farnborough Airfield, England, 13:05 hours. A jet screams past a crowd. The sound is sharp, continuous, nothing like the staccato thunder of piston engines at once defined A-shows. Heads tilt upward. Hands shield eyes. For a brief second, spectators lose track of the aircraft entirely. Too fast. This is the new normal. What few in the crowd realize is that they are witnessing the echo of a German decision made years earlier. The aircraft overhead is not a Me-262, but its DNA is unmistakable. Straight wings refined. Engines improved. Lessons absorbed. The jet age has arrived publicly now, and it carries a scar. Behind the scenes, military planners across the world treat the Me-262 not as a failed weapon, but as a case study. Its blueprints are no longer secrets. They are warnings, training manuals, staff college lectures, classified memos, all return to the same conclusion. Technology without doctrine is noise. Speed without strategy is waste. Innovation without restraint can destroy itself. Germany had engineers who understood jets. What it lacked was a system willing to listen to them. In quiet offices, analysts replay the fatal decision again and again. Hitler's insistence on turning a fighter into a bomber is dissected not as madness, but as pattern, a leader overriding specialists, bending physics to ideology, and the consequences ripple far beyond aviation. The Me-262 becomes shorthand, a phrase spoken in rooms where new weapons are proposed. When politics threatens to distort purpose, someone invokes it. Remember the jet. Because the jet is not just metal and speed. It is the moment when arrogance met reality and lost. In post-war Germany, former engineers speak cautiously. Some express bitterness. Others regret. Many simply shrug. They did what they could inside a system that punished dissent and rewarded loyalty over truth. The aircraft could outrun anything in the sky. It could not outrun control. And that, ultimately, is why it failed its creators. As new generations of jets take to the air, sleeker, deadlier, more reliable, the Me-262 fades into museums and textbooks. Children point at it behind glass. Veterans pause longer. Pilots linger. They know what they are looking at. Not a relic, a fork in history. Because if the Me-262 had been unleashed properly earlier, without compromise, World War II might not have ended differently, but it would have felt very different to those fighting it. And that feeling matters. Fear matters. Time matters. Momentum matters. Germany surrendered all three. The future does not reward those who invent first. It rewards those who adapt fastest. As the jet overhead disappears into the distance, leaving only a fading scream and silence behind it, the crowd exhales. Applause breaks out. Cameras click. Children cheer. No one thinks of Augsburg. No one thinks of the misty runway, the restrained applause, the moment when the future waited for permission it never received. But history remembers, and it remembers this clearly. Germany had the future in its hands. Then politics killed it. The 8th of May 1945, 23:01 hours. Europe. The guns fall silent. Across a continent carved apart by engines, artillery, and ambition, the war ends not with a roar, but with exhaustion. Cities burn low. Radios crackle with surrender. Men stare into nothing, trying to remember who they were before history accelerated past them. In a hangar somewhere in southern Germany, and Me-262 sits alone. Its canopy is open. Its engines are cold. Dust gathers where heat once lived. No ceremony marks its final moment. No crowd. No applause. The aircraft that once bent the sky to its will is reduced to stillness. Just another machine waiting for meaning. This is how revolutions end when they arrive too early. The jet does not explode. It is not shot down. It is simply left behind. And that is the most fitting ending of all. Because the story of the Me-262 was never about speed alone. It was about control. About who gets to decide what the future is for, and what happens when those decisions are wrong. Germany did not lose the jet because it lacked engineers, courage, or imagination. It lost it because power refused to listen. The Me-262 proved that technology can outrun doctrine, but it cannot survive it. That innovation, when bent to ego, becomes brittle. That the future is not conquered, it must be understood. Today, jets dominate the sky. Nations measure power in Mach numbers. Air superiority is assumed, engineered, systematized. And buried beneath all of it, beneath every modern fighter, every afterburner, every supersonic scream, is a lesson written in 1942, ignored in 1943, and paid for in 1944. The future does not wait. It does not compromise. And it does not forgive those who try to use it as propaganda. Germany touched the jet age first, then let it slip through its fingers. And,